Hey everybody, it's Professor Z. I'm doing my snapshot presentation for you. So I'm going to talk about my educational influences, I'm going to talk about my educational biography, and I'm going to give you some tips for being successful in college. Okay, so influences. I don't have a single person who I can look to as an influence. What I can see in my past is two sets of peers who had really big impacts on me. The first set of peers is the kids who I went to high school with. So when I was in summer between seventh and eighth grade, I moved from kind of a working class town to like middle class, upper middle class town. It was a very difficult change for me. And when I got to the new town, right, I was like considered a good student where I'd come from. When I got to the new town, the principal said, "Yeah, you're not going to be in advanced math anymore. We're going to put you in regular math." So I quickly got the message that the kids in this new place were a little ahead of where I was, and so I pushed back against that. I was very let's see. I ran with the troublemakers. I didn't take my education really seriously since I felt like I was being told it wasn't something that was for me. I said that, oh, the kids who care about education are the nerds, and I was a cool kid. I was too cool for school. So that was, and then so that was like ninth grade and 10th grade. By 11th grade, I started to adjust to life in this new town, and I started to fit in a little bit more. I felt a little more comfortable in my own skin there. I started doing a little better in school, and a lot of kids by 11th grade, they were getting ready to go to college. They were applying for school and stuff like that. I had no goals of going to college. My family had owned record shops, which today would be iTunes or Spotify, and I had always assumed I would own a record shop one day. So, but all of my friends, everyone in my high school of about 400 students, the vast majority of them were applying to colleges. So out of a kind of peer pressure, I applied to college too. And I ended up going to Westchester University. And I don't think that would have happened if it wasn't for the pressure I felt of everyone else around me who was going to school. So that's the first set of people who had an influence on me. Second set would be my friends, but especially my best friends in college. So I went to Westchester University, and I was an accounting major, as you know. I was always stronger at math. I never read much, and I had no real interest in reading, so I did accounting. And but my two roommates, who were my two best friends, they were both English majors. And as we got into maybe junior year or so, we'd be sitting around at night and just talking, doing whatever, and they would have really interesting. They would have been reading really interesting things, and they'd be talking about them, and it had a big influence on me. One thing I remember them talking about was a book they had read called The McDonaldsization of Society, and they were just talking. It was a book that spoke critically about how all of society was becoming like McDonald's, how we were making everything sort of standardized, and we were losing individuality, and that kind of had an appeal to me. I think before that, I thought the only option was to become a cog in the machine, and that talking to my friends and listening to them talk about ideas from the books they read made me realize that you could also challenge the machine, that you could try to jam up the machine, that it was okay to be different, or to be to not follow the beaten path that everybody else was following. Of course, by that time, I had almost finished my accounting degree. So what I ended up doing was finishing my degree and then going back and getting an English degree. So those friends of mine had a really big impact on me because they exposed me to ideas that I would not have otherwise been exposed to. So those are my two educational influences. My peers in high school, which I just think of as the entire class of people who I went to high school with, and then my close friends in college. So onto my educational biography. I went to public schools K through 18. So through high school, then through college, and then through graduate school. Um, so these were always larger public institutions. I graduated, like I said, with close to 400 students from high school. In Then I went to Westchester University, which is pretty big. There were probably 15,000 students there, maybe, when I was there. After that, I went to Rutgers, which is even bigger. And then for graduate school, I went to Temple. And so, what all those schools kind of have in common as public institutions is, you get students from a lot of different walks of life. You get exposure to a lot of different possibilities. Large public institutions tend to offer a lot of different programs, a lot of different degrees. So all of that helped me. It's like I started accounting and I ended English. So I did a complete 180. But then I've also taught at a lot of different institutions in Philadelphia that are not only public. I've also taught at Drexel, which is a large private university. I've taught at University of the Sciences. I've taught at Philadelphia University, taught at Temple. And seeing those different schools has made me a little bit more aware of what different schools may have to offer to different students. My wife went to private school her whole life, which is K through 12, and she was always in much smaller classes with far fewer students, and so it's made me aware of how different people. You have to find the right fit for each person. The same school is not going to be the right school for each person, so you've got to find out what's right for you. Okay. In terms of me and my strengths and challenges and things, I would say that a challenge that I've always had, that I had, especially when I switched to English, was that I was very underread. I did not grow up in a house with books. I did not read until I was in my 20s. I hated to read. And that put me behind my classmates and my peers. They were much better read than me. They're much better readers. And so I had to work really hard to keep up with them. And I was very aware of the fact that I was behind. But at the same time, one of my strengths, I think, is that I'm comfortable being wrong. I'm comfortable not knowing. And I think that helped me because I wasn't judging myself like, oh, I could never do this or whatever. To me, I always thought, hey, I'm interested in this now. I'm going to put in the time. I'm going to get good at it. So I would say that's one of my strengths is that I don't mind being wrong. I'm open to new experiences, and I'm not afraid to make a fool out of myself. So I guess the other thing I want to talk about is strategies, things that helped me through my educational experience. One thing that helped me a lot was when I started to become an active reader, which, as you all know, I am constantly harping on you to do. So it really involves annotating. And when I started writing in the margins of the books that I was reading and started responding to what I was reading, started looking up words I don't know, I just started to absorb a lot more of the content. And I think I became a better student, a better learner that way. And so I would recommend, one thing I'd highly recommend, you always have the pen in your hand. I always have a pen in my pocket. Anyone ever needs a pen, I always pull one out. So have the pen and use it when you're reading and when you're studying. And that's a big difference, I think, between college and high school. The second thing is, once you do all that sort of stuff, once you take notes in class, I think something else that I got better at as I went through school that I wasn't good at when I first got to college was processing my notes. And that just means, at first I would maybe just copy my notes over again. But that's not deep learning, that's rote learning. So what I learned I had to do is process them, like paraphrase them, put them in a new form, a new structure. And that process of processing notes is how learning happens. It's how you really find out what you know, and it's how you get it to sink in deep. So it's a really important step. It can be a painful step, and a lot of students will avoid it. as long as they can. But I found that I reached a point in college where I could no longer get by on like kind of cramming and doing things at the last minute, and that was very helpful. And then my third piece of advice is, the thing that I feel like is my strength is my willingness, my openness to new experience, openness to being wrong, to challenging myself. And I think in college, I often tell students, college is just a series of, it's a challenge after a challenge after a challenge. It's never easy. It's always going to be hard. And hard is okay. You shouldn't interpret hard as you're stupid. You should interpret hard as like, hey, this is good. I'm getting a good workout here, a good mental workout. And I think you have to embrace that. And always try and think about how what you're doing connects to your goals. Sometimes you may not be able to see it. You're like, why am I taking English 101, right? I want to be a nurse. And my answer is always, yeah, I hear you. Like, you want to be doing the nurse stuff because that's what you're passionate about. But you know what? You're gonna have to communicate too. So just think about how the stuff that doesn't seem to connect to your goals, find a way to connect it to your goals and make it meaningful, because then you're gonna put more into it, more time into it, and you're gonna get more out of it. So that is my my educational influences, my biography, and my advice to all of you. I hope you have fun making your snapshot presentations this weekend, and I look forward to seeing them by Monday. Have a good weekend.